They say freedom is a choice, but what if you're trapped in a mind prison so silent you can't even hear the bars? Imagine living a life where every decision, every feeling, every thought is manipulated until escape seems impossible. This isn't fiction. This is psychological entrapment, a sinister form of manipulation that has devastated millions. Today, we're doing a psychological autopsy on a chilling case that proves even free minds can be imprisoned from within. Our story begins in the mid-1970s with a commune in California known as the People's Temple, led by the enigmatic Jim Jones. Initially a beacon of hope and social justice, the community quickly morphed into a dark psychological experiment. Jones's charisma masked a ruthless agenda: to entrap followers psychologically by dismantling their personal autonomy and binding them entirely to the group identity. He used a combination of love, fear, and isolation to break down individual resistance. The early signs of this psychological cage were subtle, warm gatherings that slowly turned into enforced conformity rituals. Members began losing trust in their own judgment, increasingly relying on Jones's interpretation of reality. The trap widened through gradual increments, layer by layer collapsing their mental defenses. Jones's toxic leadership turned dependency into a prison where questioning meant shunning or worse. Psychological entrapment operates on several dark mechanisms woven together. First, isolation cuts victims off from external perspectives, increasing reliance on the manipulator for all cues. Jones ensured followers had minimal contact with the outside world, shaping a skewed reality. Then came constant surveillance, creating self-policing behaviors, paranoia born not from truth but manipulation. Critically, the systematic breakdown of identity through repetitive indoctrination created a mental cage. Followers were coerced into confessions and public shaming, eroding self-common sense boundaries. Cognitive dissonance played a key role. As contradictions between belief and lived experience grew, victims subconsciously rationalized deeper compliance to reduce emotional pain. This manufactured mental slavery turned doubts into harbingers of betrayal. The final layer was learned helplessness, convincing members that escape was futile and devastating consequences awaited even attempts at freedom. The most harrowing example of psychological entrapment was the Jonestown mass suicide in 1978, where over 900 people lost their lives. Jones's control had escalated into paranoia and totalitarianism. Dissent was equated with treason. After a visit from a congressional delegation raised fears of exposure, Jones intensified psychological pressure. He staged white nights, rehearsal suicide drills that blurred lines between fantasy and reality. Under immense psychological strain, many accepted the inevitable, caught in a web where surrender seemed the only option. Even as some tried to flee, armed guards and barriers prevented escape. The tragedy laid bare the terrifying power of entrapment. Logical minds paralyzed by emotional and cognitive coercion, identities dissolved, and entire communities driven to catastrophe. This psychological autopsy uncovers not just a moment of horror, but a systematic cascade engineered by dark manipulation tactics. The Jonestown incident shook the world, but its psychological ripples extended far beyond that day. Survivors suffered lifelong trauma, grappling with guilt, shattered trust, and identity confusion. The case became a painful blueprint revealing how leaders exploit psychological entrapment to suppress dissent and enforce absolute control. It exposed vulnerabilities in human cognition, how our minds can be rewired under pressure to accept false realities and abandon self-preservation instincts. The event launched widespread psychological and sociological research into cult dynamics and coercive persuasion, influencing how governments and organizations approach prevention. Yet, the subtle forces enabling entrapment still permeate everyday life. Toxic work environments, abusive relationships, and manipulative political movements use echoes of these tactics to ensnare individuals and groups without immediate detection. What makes psychological entrapment especially insidious is its invisibility. Victims may not realize they are trapped until cognitive freedom is nearly obliterated. The trap often looks like loyalty, community, even love, luring victims deeper. The dark truth is that this pattern is replicable anywhere power structures exist unchecked, thriving on vulnerability and isolation. It reminds us that freedom is not just physical, it is mental and emotional resilience. The psychological autopsy of Jonestown also warns about complacency. How ordinary people can slip from autonomous thinking into total submission when systematic manipulation aligns with fear, dependency, and social control. Recognizing these signs early, before the trap tightens, is crucial. Otherwise, psychological prisons continue to be built, one mind at a time. To recognize psychological entrapment, watch for escalating isolation, loss of personal autonomy, cognitive dissonance, and emotional dependency in relationships or groups. Resist by maintaining diverse social connections and external perspectives, nurturing critical thinking, and setting firm boundaries around your beliefs and behaviors. Educate yourself on coercive tactics and seek support from trusted sources if you sense manipulation. Psychologically, stay aware of internal conflicts and rationalizations that justify harmful circumstances. Practicing mindfulness and emotional resilience fortifies against slipping into mental captivity. Essentially, escape begins with awareness, critical reflection, and reaching out for social and professional help, because psychological entrapment is as real and dangerous as any physical prison. Today we unraveled how psychological entrapment ensnares minds, turning free will into a cage of fear and dependency. But this story doesn't end here. Next week, we'll dive even deeper into the psychological warfare tactics behind mass obedience and how ordinary people become unwitting agents of control. If you found this exploration critical, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because understanding these dark dynamics could one day save you or someone you love.